Okay, this video is going to cover DarqUI user interface in EverQuest 2, basically setting up custom spells and messages. I am not going to use the term macros unless I mean standard EverQuest 2 macros because it gets confusing. So I'll say messaging this time. As you can see, I'm in a group by myself, but the group window is still open for me. You say there's actually already spells on here that I can cast or combat arts. That's true. So how did they get there? Well, I will actually show that quickly. Wherever you have your DarqUI that you installed set up, there is the unified utility. Let's give that a second to come up, and I will explain. When you run this utility the first time to set up DarqUI, there's a few sections in here. The first one is the update section, which is always good to run. Find anything that's not green means there's a newer version. You can grab that. But there's a quick setup section. When you run setup, regardless of which of your characters you've clicked on, it is going to run all of them. You do not want to do this unless it is the first time you're setting up DarqUI, because it will overwrite everything you have set up on your characters unless you back up your UI files. That's another topic. But the first time you run this, it will go through and set up what DarqUI believes will be what you want for your class. In this case, the class I have loaded is a dirge, so it has put in a few defaults, 4 to be exact. I will pull up using the DarqUI settings, which looks like a little blue button in the DarqUI windows. It gets you quickly to this. There are other ways to pull this up. You can use the DarqUI Windows Manager and select what window you want to pull up and modify. Maintain spell monitor, for example. But the quickest way is probably to grab this. I will be covering RAID messages and settings. Here's my RAID window, but I am not in a RAID right now. I will cover that in a separate video. So for my group settings, this shows me my spells first, and these are the 4 which have been already added. They are my, again, it's a dirge class, so they are my first and second resurrection spells, and my hate spell, and then I have 1 empty slot, and a spell which isn't used right now, Gravitas. So what I'm going to do is go through adding a custom one in my slot 5. That's this empty slot right here. I'm going to add this as Confront Fear. If you know the spell ID, you can put that in here instead. I'm going to go by the name. For the icon, you don't need one. I'm going to put one just so that an icon shows up here now. By default, there is a tooltip, Confront Fear, but if I wanted the tooltip to say something different, I could put that in this field. Okay, when this is cast, this is a group, remember, so you probably want to say something like Confront Fear on tname. Tname, T-N-A-M-E, is the variable that's reconfigured with whoever the target of the spell is. In standard EverQuest macros, that is usually used as a %T for target. But again, this is not the standard macro. This is the DarqUI interface. This should, when you hit, by the way, you have to hit save on all these features or else it will not remember them. So by doing that, when I close this out, if I go under my character's name and click this, it will cast on myself. It will bring up the message, you are not in a group, which is fine. That means it tried to send me that message. That has a bit of a recast. So I'm going to go to my hate buff, which is the 4th spell. Instead of putting it in the group, I'm going to send myself a private tell, setting hate on yourself. Okay. And what you will see when I go over myself and click on that spell, it will say talking to ourselves. So that's a nice little snarky comment from our developers, but it did try to send a tell to myself. I already had it on, which is why when I click it, it puts it on. The first time you try to do it, it takes it off. So there, you can click it on and off. Let's see. I am not going to redo all these spells since each one basically works exactly the same way. You can put raid messages in or tell messages. You can put raid messages in even though it's in your group setting, so that when you click on a group box, it will broadcast it to your raid. But we'll cover that using the raid tool. There are also things such as the command box. What can you do in the command box? Well, under a normal macro, let's say you were casting something, like you were casting Return to Home, which is a very slow cast, right? It takes a while, you could see. And you want to stop that cast and do something else. Under the standard macros, you would put in cancel spellcast into your command. You can put that kind of command into here. So here you could put in cancel spellcast. The thing is, you don't need to under DarqUI. And what I mean by that is, when I start a slow cast on something else, when I fire it, it will actually stop whatever's doing and cast that spell. And if you look at, depending on how you have this set up, it says you stopped casting. That basically fires cancel spellcast for you without having to put anything in there. There's one more thing I can show as far as commands. Just to say I did, I will say this is a say command and save that. And the only reason I do that is to show that it actually does do whatever you put in there. This is a say command. There, see? Might have noticed that when I did that, I did not put /say, because it already assumes whatever you're going to type as a command. So you don't need to put the / into whatever command you're putting in there. Okay, the next tab is cures. The final tab is setting. I'm going to talk about settings first quick, because the only thing I modify in here to start is under settings, there's a refresh. You might want to move that to fastest and save that option. What that does is it determines how fast and how often this is monitoring things. So let's say you're a healer and you're monitoring someone's health, or you're an enchanter and you're about to give a power feed to someone. So you want to set settings when their power is below a certain thing. You want it to blink red so that it brings your eye to their username in your group session. You can do that. But the refresh rate, the slower it is, the less often it updates, and you won't get that trigger until it's possibly too late. The rest of these are kind of simple keys, which we really don't need to talk about for this. It's really about covering what can get cast from your group window. I happen to be in Loping Plains. That's why it's so dark, and I have my night vision on right now. I have kind of a perma noxious buff on myself. So under here, you can cycle through all the different type of cures. First one being trauma, then arcane. Here's noxious. I have it set to send a tell to myself when I try to cure noxious. I could do the same, curing noxious, put that into our group message. The thing is, it's going to, if it tries to send this tell, it would just say you're not in a group, and it would say you're talking to yourself. But I bring this up for a good reason. I'm a bard, not a healer, not a mage. So when I try to cure this, I don't have a spell which will allow me to cure it. What I do have, though, on my character are cure potion pots. So let me close this and try to click off my noxious. It cast my cure pot, right? And it tried to send the tell. That's great. Now, a thing to note here is if I did have a spell, let's say I was a shaman, okay, and I have a cure. When I click on that noxious, the first thing it's going to try to do is use my spell to cure. If my spell has already been used and it's in recycling downtime, and I have a potion on me, it will then move and cast the potion. If both are unavailable, it will not do anything, although it may send a message. I'd have to validate that.